is what are the conditions that should be created, or what are these favorable conditions. Mr. Turk, you did it from the political point of view. What were your ideas, or what were your proposals to, let's say, first of all, to keep the talented young people in Slovenia, and secondly, to give them the possibility to achieve a level of excellency?
Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Also very interesting introduction and the keynote. I was indeed the Minister of Education, Science, Culture and Sports, and with all these portfolios I was the scapegoat, and I was the guilty person for just about everything, including the emigration of young people out of Slovenia, which actually just started at the time, or it was brought to the media attention. While in fact I could claim that it is the opposite. It's actually the Minister of Education and Science who did a good job, actually the people before me, because they raised competitive talent who could find jobs elsewhere, not in Slovenia. So essentially it's not the job of the Minister of Education and Science to find jobs for the people who are educated or who are scientists. It's vice versa. And to go to the root of the problem, and of this discussion, I believe this crowd, we are all in this crowd, kind of a little bit more liberal or conservative, and as liberals we believe in life, liberty and pursuit of happiness. And actually people leaving, they are pursuing happiness. We cannot blame them for that. They are doing just that. What has changed with this opening up of borders, with globalization, etc., is that actually countries are on the market. Actually a young person today can go to the market of available countries and say, oh, I will pick this country because they are offering the best service to me as a young scientist or entrepreneur or doctor or whatever. And you have winners and losers in this game. And winners and losers are determined by the, I would say, economic, political, fiscal system of these countries. And just as an illustration as to where I think, or I agree with that the problem is there, and that the solution should be in that area. I would read, if I have the time, just a short paragraph of a letter that a 20-year-old French girl wrote to President Hollande, explaining why she will leave France. And I think it gives in a nutshell where actually the problems are and actually what the solutions are, which are not so extremely complicated. So I quote, Mr. President, this will probably shock you, but it is mainly for fiscal reasons that I will leave. Simply because I do not feel like working all my life to pay taxes, a large part of which will only service the 1.3 trillion euros of debt that your generation has kindly left us. If these borrowings had at least been invested to prepare the future of the country, if I was getting a small benefit from them, it would not be a problem for me to help repay them. But this debt only helped your generation live above its means and assure itself a generous social safety net, which I will not have. The letter goes on and on with something like this, but actually here you have it. The problem is in the economic, fiscal and other policies for which the countries are not attractive to talent. I'm a strong believer in this notion that actually a leftist social scientist, Richard Florida, popularized, that in the world globally there is a war for talent. And what the left would typically say, oh yes, and you have to create nice neighborhoods and a lot of cultural events and housing for the young and so on, so that they would like to migrate and so that you would attract the creative class into your country. But the essence is a sound fiscal and economic policy that the country has to pursue. And then, of course, talent comes, entrepreneurs come, everybody else comes. And Europe is not doing a good job in this respect at all.
So one of the consequences would be not to harmonize the fiscal systems in Europe. in order to foster competition?
I am very skeptical of the harmonization that Brussels is trying to do. If you look at the successful historic period of Europe as such, great breakthroughs happened when there was fair competition among entities. Take, for example, Renaissance Italy. It's a great example. You had these city-states competing with each other, trying to offer the best environments for the Michelangelos and Galileos and all the others. And I think there should be a competition of what is this infrastructure for talent among European countries, because otherwise they will simply go to the States or to China or Latin America is extremely popular with the Spaniards and with the Portuguese. And I try to shift most of the blame, as usual, to the finance minister and to the economic minister.
Tanja, if you compare your experiences from here, from Slovenia, to your American experience, or your, let's say, continental European experience regarding our problem to the United States, the United States really doing so much better than Europe, and why?
Let me just start by mentioning that I left to study there, so I noticed differences in how their educational system is structured and the incentives and what the professors expect from the students and why you are actually at a school, and it was vastly different from what you expect, what you encounter here. To illustrate this, here you go to school to memorize things and to pass the tests. That is the goal. While in the States, the goal was to learn something and improve yourself, to think with your own head, and it didn't matter if I agree with a professor. It mattered that I was thinking with my own head and developing thoughts and ideas, that I studied the material rather than that at the test I memorized to the exact word what the professor said during the lectures. So there is a vast difference in that, and I think in the States, and not just in the States but also Western Europe, this kind of educational system is encouraging people to be entrepreneurial at the end and also do something with their life, to constantly be on their toes and think about solutions to the problems rather than to just, whenever they encounter a problem, give up because they can't think with their own head. So that would be the first area that I would like to mention. The second area would be the values. In the States, values like responsibility, freedom are key values, and you can feel it. You can feel it everywhere, not just on your campus or when you're studying, but wherever you go among ordinary people. They stand up for themselves. They cherish freedom, they fight for freedom, they fight for themselves, and at the same time they are prepared to take responsibility for their actions. And with that kind of thinking and approach and doing things, it is completely different now that I came back to Europe, and I'm looking at the society and noticing how people behave here and how they think, and I think sometimes people think that we can change on a couple of things, we can change a couple of laws and things will change drastically, and we can change it, we can become the United States, and it's not just becoming the United States, we can be prosperous, we can be this and that. It will take really long time for Europe, or even more so Eastern Europe, that came from different background than Western Europe and Central Europe, to, the goal is not to have the same values, but the goal is to value, your freedom, and to value who you are and what is the most important thing for every individual. If that individual is willing to talk about it or not, it is the most important thing, freedom. And the third area that I would like to mention, I came at the thought of, would be work ethic. In Slovenia, I always felt outcasted because I was always a hard worker. I felt people didn't like me because I wanted to work hard. When I was younger, I wanted to study hard. I wanted to have good grades. I wanted to learn. I wanted to, be as fast as I can be. And I felt this was something that people didn't appreciate. Not just that, they didn't like it. They wanted, they wanted to tap me down so I can be like everyone else. And they're not doing this. They were not doing this just to me, but to all other people who wanted to stick out of the average. In the States, it's just the opposite. I mean, they appreciate if you want to do something, work hard, because they know that everyone will benefit. It's not just that individual that benefits from working hard, studying hard, but the whole society. So that comes to my mind as the third big difference.
So, Tanja,